By show of hands, how many of you were in the generation or not more than one generation removed that left the family farm? So either your parents grew up on a farm and moved, or maybe your grandparents grew up on a farm. Raise your hands. Okay. That's about half the room. That's kind of about normal if you get a group this size together. Something transformational happened in our society as they moved from the farm, and it's been well documented and well written about and all that. It really changed our society. And what I would say to you, in the world of work today that we live, the transformation that's going on puts that transformation, I think, just to a minor point in history. We really are at an incredible point, and I think it's probably one of the reasons that so many of us are so drawn to things that make an impact beyond just our companies. We're looking to make an impact with our people and our cultures and all those things. And we're not going to solve that in 10 minutes, but we're going to really take a couple of minutes to dive into it deep. I'm going to talk a little bit about some numbers, some geeky stuff about what's going on, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about maybe what really does start to transform a culture. And if you're like me, I've run businesses really my whole adult life, and you know, we're going to take about 10 minutes. That's about as much time as I thought about culture in my companies for so many years. And you chuckle not too loud because that's true for most of you as well, right? And so you don't want to give that away. But I heard a really interesting speaker. He's a technology futurist a few months ago. And he talked about this explosion of knowledge. And we've all seen it. It's why we're totally wired and connected, and our people are, and they never get away, and stress and burnout and all those things are so rampant. But what's driving it was really profound. I really hadn't thought about it. It's the explosion of knowledge. So around 1900, which was really not that long ago in terms of a work culture, it took about 100 years for knowledge to double. So whatever knowledge exists in the field, it grew in about 100 years to be doubled. And that started accelerating. And in the 80s, they started measuring it by industry, because it doubled faster in some industries than others. But it was about 2 to 3 years in most industries that knowledge doubled, which is pretty amazing. Tom Hill's a great reader, but he can't keep up with all the books being produced because of this rate of knowledge growth. The Internet of Things. How many of you are familiar with the Internet of Things? I wasn't familiar really with what it was, so in case you were like me, I'll tell you, it's when machines start to talk to other machines through the Internet. Right now, we talk through our devices with the Internet. We do work through a laptop or whatever. But machines increasingly are doing their work with other machines through the Internet. And IBM had a really interesting white paper out about 18 months ago. And what they said is when the Internet of Things is fully functional, which was only 5 years out from when they wrote it, which is about 3.5 years out from today, knowledge will double at the rate of every 12 hours. That ought to freak you out in terms of what it means for your business. It means that you and I have to be hyper-focused with our people on creating what's called a river of knowledge that gets them the right information. But more than that, it means that we've got to really be very intentional about the cultures that we create. And so let's look at some of the stats really quick. 80% of CEOs, Harvard Business Review surveyed, said that they're worried about their company's ability to attract and retain the people they need to grow. SHRM did this study, Society of Human Resource Managers, last year. HR professionals said turnover and employee engagement were the key drivers. About 40% of them said that's our key concern as HR leaders. Gallup has been doing this survey for years. If your workplace is like my workplace and the average workplace in America, only about 3 out of 10 of your employees is really actively engaged at work. The other 70% are either disengaged or they're actively disengaged. An interesting side note about those actively disengaged people, they destroy all the profit of your actively engaged. So we can't ignore this trend. We've got to start to fight back about it. And actually, companies have started to. They've started dumping hundreds of millions and billions of dollars nationwide and worldwide into this issue, and we're not moving the needle at all. It's staying the same. So these rewards and recognition programs and all these things we're doing to drive culture are really not moving the needle. I'm not very good with this clicker, obviously, but we're having a good time. Our employees are moving on. ERE said that turnover in 2015 was up 44% on average just from the year before. There's a number of studies out, depending on which one you look at. Somewhere between 30 and 50% of your employees are thinking about changing jobs this year. So how do we reverse that trend? And this is a quote that I love. I'm not necessarily a fan of the public policy that he instituted when he was with the Department of Labor, but the quote's amazing. The only unique asset that a business has for gaining a sustained competitive advantage over rivals is its workforce, the skills and dedication of its employees. There's no other sustainable advantage in the modern high-tech global economy. It truly is all about our people. And if it's all about our people, and our people are stressed, disengaged, thinking about leaving, what does that say for the futures of the organizations we lead? We're doing okay there, you think? 70% of U.S. employers have no plans for their future talent needs, according to Harvard Business Review. 60% of the jobs in the 21st century require skills that are only possessed by 20% of our workforce. I've spent my life in the recruiting and talent acquisition business. I will tell you that we're dying for tradesmen, plumbers, craftsmen, all those kinds of things that are so critical. The median age for a manufacturing worker in this country is 56 years old. What do people start thinking about doing when they're in their late 50s? They start looking at retirement. How are we going to transfer that knowledge into the next generation of workers that don't want those kinds of jobs? It can be turned around. Culture can. I had an opportunity to hear a lunch presentation by Doug Conant from Campbell Soup. Doug was CEO. 3 years before he took over as CEO, Campbell's Soup had lost 50% of their market share. What happens to a publicly traded CEO when they lose 50% of their market share? They're gone, right? They exited. And Doug said when Gallup met with them, Gallup said, your employee engagement surveys are the worst results we've ever seen in our Fortune 1000 company since we've started doing these, and they've been doing them for a very long time. And he talked about what they did to turn that around. They focused just on 4 things. What their higher calling was as a company. You got to know your why. Fair compensation. If you get comp wrong, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't mean you have to lead the market, but you've got to at least be at the median. You've got to be at the 50 percentile. You've got to have fair comp. Making sure employees felt valued and helping employees learn and grow. The reason that Gary and Dan and the team really have put this together from a company perspective is helping people get valued and helping employees learn and grow is it's at the root of how we change our organizations. So let's talk about getting a new clicker. No other speaker had an issue with that. I just want to note that before, Kristen points that out. What can we have impact on? Purpose. If employees do know their why, they're more likely to be engaged. So as a leader in the company, first of all, you got to know where you're going. Not just a general direction of where the company's headed, but a specific goal that you're reaching towards. I remember when Chick-fil-A talked about when they had about $200 million in sales, they set a goal to be a billion-dollar company. And it was a very aggressive, it was a BHAG goal, if you will. But those kinds of goals let your people buy into it. And not just monetary goals, but where you're going in terms of how you treat people, how you treat your customers, the values that you have, the strengths that your teams have. This one is critical. Gallup has done more work than anybody around this. And it's if you're faith-based, it's a very biblical concept. You and I have a tremendous ability to grow and develop in an area of strength. In fact, it's almost unlimited. And you and I have almost no ability to grow and develop in an area of weakness. But what do we do with our employees when we sit down and review? John, you're great at this. 30 seconds. And then 20 minutes of a performance improvement plan on the areas that John is failing and he's got to get better at. And the reality is John's not going to get better at that. Now, if John's a forklift driver and he can't see, it's pretty obvious you may need to move him into a different role. But John's problem in the workplace is probably not that obvious. So this whole idea of looking at your team and giving them their strengths is critical to helping them not only do well, which helps the company do well, but helping them engage in the work they're doing every day. And then growth, develop and connect your people. People join organizations, what do they leave? Managers, bingo. They join organizations, they leave managers. the turnover that you and I experience in our organizations is almost exclusively, particularly if it happens in the first 18 months of employees' engagement with a company, it's almost always a failure to connect with one of two groups, people inside the organization or their direct report. So if you want to impact the culture, things that will help you monitor, measure, and improve employees' ability to connect with each other. Gallup calls it having a best friend at work. If you've ever taken their survey, you're asked, do you have a best friend at work? I thought that was the stupidest question I'd ever read on a survey the first time I saw it. But as I've understood the science behind it, it's powerful in terms of that connection. And more importantly, things that will help your managers connect with their first levels. Help them have the kinds of conversations that you probably have with people as a leader naturally. You just learned it over the year in your career. Structured conversations that help them engage those people, connect with those people, and retain those people. That's the important one. And then lastly, Marcus Buckingham, a satisfied employee knows clearly what's expected of him every day at work. And what Gallup has found out is if you let your people use their strengths, they're going to be 8% more productive. How would you like to have your entire workforce 8% more productive? And they're 15% less likely to leave you. So that culture starts with connecting people and connecting people with their managers. Thanks. You guys have a great day. Thank you.
All right, if I can have Brenton and